What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to our first week talking about the Warlock subclasses. I am very much looking forward to really getting into this series, and we get to start off with a really fun one, the Archfey. And if you are excited to add in a little bit of creepy, spooky, but also super charming at the same time, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure to share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. So what makes an Archfey an Archfey? Why is this Warlock unique, right? Really, the biggest defining feature is the fact that they are very charming in typical encounters, right? They typically have very high charisma, which Warlocks normally do anyway, but they're really known for being very charming or incredibly scary. You really don't get any in between. So you're either going to be best friends and they're probably manipulating you, or you're just going to be terrified. And honestly, either way seems like a really cool way to build a character. But how does it compare to the other subclasses? Let's find out. Starting off, we have our expanded spell list. Now, I didn't talk about this in my general Warlock guide, and of course I'll link that up in the icon above if you want to check that out if you're questioning anything about just the general Warlock. But basically we get an expanded spell list on pretty much all of the Warlocks, which is really nice. However, there is a bit of uniqueness to how Warlock subclasses interact with the spell lists as opposed to some of the others, right? Pretty much all of the other caster classes that we've talked about have presented expanded spell list options, and they are added onto your spell list for free. You already know them and you can cast them anytime, or maybe it's once per day, or maybe it's just, you just get them added and they're just free spells. This is not that way. Warlocks do not do it that way, and so with this, these are just new options that you have that you normally would not have access to as a Warlock. So it's cool, but they are ones that you do have to actually go out of your way to take, and you are giving up something else in order to take them. So keep that in mind, but let's take a look at the spell list for this. This list honestly is not that bad. The first spells that we see honestly are pretty good standout options. Fairy Fire is amazing, being able to give you free advantage pretty much as long as the opponent fails to save. And Sleep at really low level is honestly really great. Now, of course, we would want to drop this when we reach later levels, but at least for now, it's not that bad. Calm Emotions is fine. Phantasmal Force is okay at low levels. And then we get some kind of weird choices. Blink, I'm not the biggest fan of, so but Dominate Beast, Greater Invisibility, Dominate Person, and Seeming, those are all pretty good. Honestly, I really like those last four that we get there. And honestly, I'd be tempted to take most of these options. I don't say that a lot about expanded spell list options. Most of the time I have ones that are obvious standouts for the better, and then there are a few that are just bad. This one has definitely a lot more good than bad, and so to me this is an 8 out of 10 list. There are a couple on here that I think are just kind of meh, but overall it's a solid list, and they're really good contenders for taking this over something that is normally on the Warlock list. So let's start taking some levels, and at level 1 we get Fey Presence. This is a feature that really ties into the flavor of this subclass, which is pretty cool in that we can either charm or frighten people according to whichever one you want to do, which is really flavorful. But is it powerful? Let's just see. So as an action, we can choose to fire off this effect, which is a 10-foot cube around us. We don't get to choose the creatures that are within it. It's just all creatures that are right there near you are going to be affected by this. They have to make a wisdom saving throw against our saving throw DC, and if they fail, then they are going to be charmed or frightened, whichever one we choose, until the end of our next turn. Once we use this feature, we can't do it again until we finish a rest. This feature is pretty cool. I think as a level 1 feature, I think it's actually pretty nice. Normally, you're not going to see these powerful charm and frightened effects, even if it is just for a turn, until much later in life. Most creatures you're going to fight that are going to have things like this, you're probably not going to see until level 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range. And so getting this really early is going to really have an effect on how you treat these low level encounters, and I think it's going to work just fine. Obviously, it's not going to scale amazingly well, but it's still not bad, and honestly it combos kind of well with our 6th level feature, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But basically, if a bunch of creatures get near you and you don't want them there, you can either frighten them to make them all run away, or you can charm them and try to, you know, make friends and make nice with them. Either way, I think that's fine, and this little burst that we can do is decent. Just watch out for hitting your friends. We don't want to do that, and we get it back on a short rest, which I think is totally fine. For that, I've got to give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's a pretty good feature, and it's going to be applicable for most levels, honestly. There are going to be some creatures later on in life that are going to be immune to Charm and Frighten, but at least for a good while, this is going to work out for most situations, and you're going to get a lot of use out of it. At 6th level, we get Misty Escape, which gives us a bit of a defensive feature, but kind of in a different way, and I think it's actually pretty decent. So whenever we take damage, we can actually use our reaction to turn invisible and teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space that we can see. We can remain invisible until the start of our next turn, or until we attack or cast a spell. And of course, we get this back after we finish a rest. Again, this is a very applicable feature. We're going to be taking damage all the time. It's the nature of Dungeons and Dragons, right? And having this special reaction that we can use in order to get ourselves out of danger is really nice. This subclass is really not all that much geared to melee combat. You of course can do it, but it's really not geared toward that. You're probably going to be more of a, you know, Eldritch Blast and other support spells and that kind of thing. So being able to get out of the fight if you are in melee for whatever reason, this is very helpful, right? This could break up a multi-attack, because if you get hit by one attack, you're out, right? You don't have to sit there and take 3-4 attacks depending on however much that a creature has, which can be really helpful in keeping you alive. And it can also help you to position. If you are running support for your party, you can then get to somebody else to help them out, which can also be really helpful. I like this. And again, we get it back after a short rest, which I think is good. Would I like to see this be able to be used more? Sure, but still, it's not that bad. I would still give this an 8 out of 10 as well. Teleportation is never a bad thing, and especially 60 feet. There aren't going to be very many creatures that are going to be able to catch you after you do this, and they've already used their attack, so they're not going to be able to dash. So you're pretty much home free after that, which is going to be pretty cool. At level 10, we get Beguiling Defenses, and this is pretty much an Uno reverse card, but as a feature. So whenever you are being charmed by a creature, or at least something is attempting to charm you, you're actually immune to that, which is pretty cool. But you can also use your reaction to attempt to charm that creature back, which is pretty cool. That creature now has to make a wisdom saving throw against your saving throw DC, or be charmed by 1 minute or until that creature takes damage. Now, this is much less applicable than the previous 2 features that we have talked about. Yes, you can use this an unlimited amount of times, but how much is this going to come up, right? I don't see this coming up nearly as often, just because this very much relies on what your enemies do, and it also relies on your DM not being metagamey, because if your DM is metagamey and knows you're immune to the charm condition and just never goes for charmed on you, then this doesn't ever come up. And in addition to that, if your DM does go for it on you, and the creature that is trying to charm you is immune to being charmed, then this doesn't work in that way either. So I see plenty of situations where this is just not going to come up, and even if it does come up, there are going to be ways to get around it in some ways. So I don't see this as being all that useful. It'll come up, sure, but it will be rare, and it's going to be kind of a forced situation from your DM, unless your DM just forgets that you have this feature. Either way, to me, it's a 6 out of 10. I just don't see it as being as applicable as the other 2 features have been, despite being able to use it as many times as you want to. When after a creature does it one time, that creature's going to learn and not do it again. So it's probably not going to come up all that much. Finally, level 14, we get Dark Delirium. That's right. Warlocks get their quote-unquote capstone feature for their subclasses really early at level 14, which is honestly pretty cool. And this is honestly no exception as a feature. So with this as an action, we can choose a creature that we can see within 60 feet of us. It must make a wisdom saving throw, and if it fails, it is either charmed or frightened by us for 1 minute or until concentration is broken. This essentially just puts the creature into a pocket dimension of sorts, at least it seems to that creature, and it's sort of an illusion type of thing. If the creature, of course, is immune to illusions by true sight or something else, obviously this is going to fail, and it can only see and hear itself, you, and the illusion. This, of course, will end if the creature takes any damage, and we have to finish a short or long rest to use this feature again. This one's kind of tough because anytime that we have a feature that requires concentration, I'm normally not a fan, just because I have a lot of spells that I would much rather concentrate on, such as, you know, dominate monster. That I would much rather be going for something like that and concentrating than I would to concentrate on just making something within an illusion that I can't attack and that nobody can attack without breaking this feature. To me, that makes it tough. Yes, this will take one enemy out of the fight, assuming it doesn't have like true sight. So maybe it's good for a boss battle, for instance, if everybody wants to gather around it and then, you know, hold your attacks until one thing happens. That could be a way to do things, but to me, I don't see this as being anything crazy. The biggest issue I have is concentration. Honestly, I think this wouldn't be that bad if it didn't require our concentration, but that is us giving up on another feature. And would I rather use this, or would I rather use Hold Monster to make everybody crit, right? Hold Monster is just better. And I would much rather go with that, or Hold Person, or whatever the situation happens to be for that creature. I just don't see this being as applicable as a spell that we've had access to since 5th level spells, which has been several levels ago. So I just don't see this as being the most insane thing out there, unfortunately. It's got to get a 6 out of 10 for me. Unfortunately, I just don't think that this is as good as it sounds. There, of course, will be situations where this comes up, but in most situations when you're hitting high level, I just don't see this being as good as what it seems. So what do we think of the Archfey Warlock? It's a cool one, right? I really like the flavor that this gives us. It gives us a couple of routes that we can go as far as how to present ourselves and how our patron may present him or herself, and I think that's really cool. I'm always for being able to customize my character as I want, and this gives us a lot of options. I think the expanded spell list is really solid overall, and honestly the beginning features are really good, and that's really what matters, right? Whenever I'm doing my rankings, I'm not going to be putting as much weight into the late game features, just because most people aren't going to 14th level, right? So Dark Delirium isn't going to come up all that much. Beguiling Defenses, it'll come up some, you know, if you're playing Curse of Strahd, right, that goes to 10. So that'll come up for you in that case. And this would be a perfect example for that, just because there are charm and frightened effects that come up a lot in a campaign like that. So this would be perfect for that. But at the same time, right, it's certainly far from perfect. There's a lot of things that I would love to be able to improve on this. But is it a bad subclass? No, I really don't think so. To me, it hovers around that like 7.5 mark. I think it's pretty good. To me, I'm willing to round up though to an 8, and so this is going to get an 8 out of 10 this week. Let me know what you think down below. Am I too generous? Am I not generous enough? Is this thing stupid broken and I'm missing it? Or is this thing complete trash and I'm overshooting it? I would love to know in the comments down below. But later on this week, we're going to be building one together, and I'm looking forward to that. And until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.